Hold on a moment. Let me hit my record button and minimize that. I'm using a new operating system here.
Yeah, it looks different.
It's Windows 10. Not that happy with it, but they forced me to upgrade. Yeah, this is the way I do all my tutoring for these tests is just by going through practice tests.
Okay.
Okay, and you'll notice that one of the differences between the SAT and the ACT is the SAT starts out every math section with all of these formulas.
Uh-huh.
So you don't necessarily have to know or memorize these because you're going to see this list every test, but certainly understand how to work with them. Most of them should not be new to you. You should have gotten them in geometry. They're pretty standard, but if they have questions where you need one of them, you can always go back to the beginning of the test and see these formulas.
Awesome.
Okay. Now this practice test here is from the company that makes the tests. So you can buy lots of booklets that have practice tests in them. But I've always felt like the company that makes the test is going to be your best bet for accuracy, because there are definitely some companies that are trying to sell you their tutoring program. And so they might give you some sample questions that are on the highest degree of difficulty just because they want you to do poorly on those sample questions so that you'll sign up for their tutoring. And I don't believe this test does. As you know, the new SAT test has both a calculator and a non-calculator section.
Uh-huh.
The old SAT test had calculator you could use for the whole thing, but not anymore. There's also no longer a penalty for guessing. So you want to make sure you never leave a question unanswered. Why don't we start by just going through each of these, and it'll give me an idea of what your math skills are.
All right, let's do it.
So number one.
If that equals K.
They say K is 3, so let's go ahead and plug in 3 for K. Now solve that equation for X.
I would multiply the 3 on the bottom up. So I get X minus 1 equals 9. And then add the 1 over, so then X equals 10.
All right. Number 2. If I see that you know how to do a problem, I won't spend any time on it at all. I'll go to the next problem immediately.
All right. So this one, I remember I. 3i plus -8 plus 9i. So that one you just combine the like terms.
Exactly. So what do you get?
-1 plus 12i.
Okay. Good.
I have to go with A for that one.
Yeah. Notice that you really didn't need to know what I was.
Exactly.
You just needed to combine like terms. All right. Number 3 is very typical of a type problem that they have on both of these exams.
These ones are the ones that kind of trip me up, where it's like
they give you
all the I guess, parameters and what they equal, and they ask like what.
Let me give you a little trick here. First of all, let's talk about taking these tests.
Okay.
There's three ways to solve these problems. There's algebraic, the traditional mathematic way.
Mm-hmm.
There's back solving, where you just start with the answers and see if that's the right answer or not. And then a third way is to pick numbers and then back solve. Now, it's important you understand that when you take these tests, you're not trying to impress, you're not trying to prove your math skills to anybody. What you're trying to do is get the best score. It's like when you play tennis. You don't care how you do it as long as you win the match, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's the name of the game with these tests, is to score the best. So it doesn't matter which of these solutions you use. It may seem inferior to use back solving or number 3 because it doesn't show you know how to do it mathematically or algebraically, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
The goal is to just get it right. Okay? So this one isn't that hard because it is multiplication only.
Okay.
So it's not that hard to see that if he sends M texts for 5 hours, his total number of texts are going to be 5M.
Yep.
And Tyrone is going to be 4P. So
exactly.
total messages are 5M plus 4P. So this one you can solve fairly straightforward.
It just kind of lays it out for you.
It does. This one's an easy one, though.
Yep.
Ones that are difficult are where there is both multiplication and division going on.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and that confuses me. It really does. Just because it's hard to wrap your brain around all of it at once. So let's talk about this third solution. Picking numbers and then back solving. Let's use it on this problem. Even though it's an easy problem, it'll be an excellent illustration of how to use that technique.
Okay.
First of all, the technique, you should recognize that it's a possible technique because we have variables in the question and we have variables in every answer. When you see that, think this solution, picking numbers and then back solving. Let's suppose that you had somebody that couldn't come up with 5M plus 4P. They just couldn't think it through. Well, let's pick some numbers for M and P. Okay, let's pick simple numbers. 2 for M, 3 for P. Now we can actually go through the text. He sent 2 text messages each hour for 5 hours, so he sent a total of 10. And Tyrone sent 3 text messages each hour for 4 hours, so he sent us a total of 12. So the total is 22. We know that. We can work that out.
Okay.
So now we go through, now we back solve. We go through all 4 answers until we find one that, given an M of 2 and a P of 3, gives us 22. Well, notice that A, 2 times 3 is 6 times 9, that's 54. That can't be it.
Nope.
This is even bigger. That can't be it. But when we get to this one, we get 5 times 2 is 10, plus 4 times 3 is 12, 22. That's our answer right there. Even if we did not know how to formulate it, by picking numbers for these variables, notice that they haven't told you what M and P are. And whenever you see a problem like that, where they give you variables and they don't tell you what they are, and then all of the answers have variables in them, you can use this technique. And it's pretty valuable when you have like 2 multiplications and a division. so that your answer might be MP divided by Z, something like that. It's really hard to do that without picking numbers and back solving.
Yeah, those are the ones that are hard to wrap your head around.
Yes, they are, very much so. But if you pick numbers, it's easy to wrap your head around them. Just
Right.
like this problem. I mean, this was easy enough because it was multiplication, just the addition of two multiplications. But when they throw in a division, all of a sudden it just becomes a jumbled mess in your brain. But if you pick numbers, simple numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, you end up knowing how to come up with the correct answer based on those numbers, and then you just test all four solutions until you find one that gives you that answer.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool technique. Hopefully we'll find another problem that involves that. Now, let's talk about something else. A lot of people, when they see a problem that has a lot of words in it, a lot of sentences, they assume that it's an extra tough problem. And it's basically not true. It's the opposite. The more sentences there are, the easier the problem's going to be. And that's an important thing to recognize, because as you take these tests, you have to pay very much attention to your pace.
Right.
If you're taking an ACT test and you have 60 questions to answer in 60 minutes, then you better be on a pace of 1 minute per question. If you find
yourself, you're going to have a lot of guessing to do.
Well, not just that, but let's say you get to question 20 with only 30 minutes. It takes you 30 minutes to do 20 questions. If you stay at that pace, you're not even going to see the last 20 questions. You're going to get to question 40 and run out of time.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that the last 20 questions might have had some really easy 5-second questions in them. So one goal that you always want to maintain is make sure you see every question at least once. In other words, you want to be able to do those 60 questions, at least read them in 50 minutes with time to spare. Because the first time you go through, you never want to spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on any question, okay? If you find yourself spending 3 minutes on a question, put a check mark by it, come back to it after you've seen all 60.
Got it.
And then guess. You may have time to spend some time trying to figure it out, but you may only have 60 seconds left and you have 10 questions that need answering. So you basically at that point in time have to just start guessing, and it doesn't matter what you guess. Just guess answer A for all of them. There's no methodology that helps you there when you're guessing.
Right.
Okay. Unless, of course, you can eliminate some. In other words, there's going to be some questions where you can eliminate 2 of the 4 answers. In which case, then, you obviously want to guess between the other 2. But if you read this problem, go ahead and read it. Read it silently, just because you're not going to be able to read it out loud when you're taking the test. So you want to get, and don't have a calculator in front of you.
All right, no calculator.
Most of these problems, the non-calculator part of the test, the most you're ever going to have to do is multiply and divide single-digit numbers. You're not going to have to do big numbers at all.
That's good.
And in fact, the entire test, even before they changed it, really didn't give any great advantage to somebody that had a calculator. As long as you were good at multiplying, dividing, adding, and subtracting single-digit numbers, you were fine. In fact, frequently the calculator led you astray, and it made the problem actually harder. So on this one, the number of phone calls that you have to fix at the end of each day can be estimated by that equation, with P being the number of phone calls left. And D is the number of days she has worked that week. So what's the meaning of the 108? Read through each of those four answers.
What is the meaning of complete the repairs within? Okay. Each week. Okay.
What do you think the answer is?
I think I actually remember this from one of the practice tests that I looked at. There's one very similar to this.
Well, maybe. I may have chosen, I got this test from online. I have plenty of SAT practice tests, but I don't have the new one. So I went online to get the new SAT test, which this is. This is non-calculator portion. So. And there's 4 of them on this site. So if you've seen these questions before, we'll go to a different test. Although I'm not sure that that really matters. Part of the tutoring process is showing you the techniques to answer these questions as much as the math.
Right.
Okay. What if you let D equal 0? Now remember what D is. D is the number of days she has worked that week.
So that means if she has worked 0 days, P is the number of phones left at the start of the week because she has worked 0 days.
Exactly. So.
So I can just plug in.
Answer B.
D there, yeah.
She starts each week with 108 phones to fix.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Still.
I see how you can kind of.
Yeah, the technique is as much as the math here. It really is. And particularly with certain kinds of questions. Certain kinds of questions really, really lend themselves to back solving.
Right.
Questions that I like to call marble questions or age questions. You know, Bill has twice as many marbles as John, and John has 10 more marbles than Michael, and all 3 of them have 100 marbles. Well, those are perfect back-solving questions. You don't even attempt to set that up algebraically. You just go straight into the back-solving. It's by far the quickest way to solve those.
Just like plugging in answers to the...
We'll come across a pure back-solving problem. It's a little similar to the pick numbers and back solve, only you don't have to pick any numbers. You just have to do a straight back solve. Now this, number 5 here, is not one of those. This is a straight algebraic thing.
That's just combining the...
Yeah, it's removing the parentheses and then combining everything.
Yep.
First step is to remove the parentheses, which is not trivial. Okay?
Right.
I can remove the first set of parentheses without changing anything, and you always can. Okay? In other words, the first set of parentheses is not really needed in the problem. It's only there to kind of clarify the problem. The second set of parentheses, when I remove those, that's very important because it's being subtracted. Everything in these parentheses is being subtracted from the first. And the way you handle that is you apply that negative sign to every term when you remove the second set of parentheses.
So you just flip the signs.
You flip the signs. So what's the first thing I'm going to do here?
It is going to be plus x squared y.
Good.
Minus 3xy squared.
Good.
and then plus 3y squared.
Correct. Now we have to combine like terms. Well, there's only one x squared y and another one there. So what's the sum of those two?
2x squared y.
And then we've got a minus 3y squared and a plus 3y squared. Those cancel.
Cancel.
Let's cross these out because we've already taken care of them. And then finally we have xy squared. What's the combination of that and that?
2xy squared.
Plus 2xy squared. So that's our answer.
Yep.
C.
Is it true that for the SAT, the farther you get into the test, the harder the problems get, generally?
Generally, yes, but not always. Not always. Most of the practice tests, that's true, particularly of the ACT. The problem is that occasionally they will really stick an easy problem in at the end. And the people that don't reach the end don't get the advantage of getting to do that easy problem. In other words, I don't know how many problems there are on the new SAT, but let's assume there were 60. That's the ACT. So there's 20 easy, there's 20 medium, and there's 20 hard. Well, you for sure want to be spending your time doing those. There's not many people that are going to be able to answer all 60 questions in the allotted time. So there's some questions you're not going to be able to give as much time as you want to give on it. Well, make sure that it's from that category.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's pretty important as you're taking the test to take note whether you're dealing with an easy, medium, or hard problem. There are some hard problems where you could spend 10 minutes on it and you may not get it right.
Right.
So that would be a big mistake to waste 10 minutes on it.
Exactly.
You spend those 10 minutes probably doing 20 easy problems. And they each count the same. The hard ones don't count any more than the easy ones. So the biggest mistake you can make is to not get to an easy problem. If you don't get to a hard problem, it's no huge loss. And I'm not saying that about you. I'm saying that about everybody. You just want to make sure that you give yourself a chance on these 40 and then do your best on these 20 and guess on the ones that you don't have any idea on. But planning your the way you're going to take this test is important. Now, let's look at number 6. I have an equation that the height of anybody can be given by this formula. The height is in inches, A is ages, between the age of 2 and 5. So what's the estimated increase in a boy's height each year?
So is this where we
if I said to you, what's the increase in a boy's height from age 2 to 3? Could you give me that answer?
You would need to plug in the 2 and the 3.
Correct. So let's do it. So what is h of 2 equal to?
H of 2 equals 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 28.6, which is 34.6.
Yeah, and make sure you can do that math without a calculator easily.
Yep.
If you don't, I have a special site that is like a tennis drill. It will perfect your single-digit math skills. To be honest,
I got that. It took me a sec.
I think you have it too. You don't I don't remember you being deficient in math skills. Some people are. I mean, you can get all the way to pre-calculus and not know what 8 times 7 is.
Because
Because,
you just have your calculator
yeah,
right there.
exactly. As long as you have a calculator, you can do most anything. Problem is, you can't use it anymore on this part of the test. So
Yep.
your single-digit math skills turn out to be much more important than they used to be. Okay, now what's this height when he's 3 years old?
3 times 3, which is 9, plus 28.6, so 37.6.
So what's the increase from 1 year to the next?
3.
Correct. And it wouldn't have mattered what I chose for the ages as long as I was between 2 and 5. I could have done the first one at 4 and the next one at 5. Because all I'm looking for is the height difference in 1 year.
There we go.
All right. 7 looks extremely complicated.
It looks very difficult.
Easy as pie.
All right.
Okay? And here's why. If I tell you that, let me make up a easier, x is equal to 3/5 y, how do you solve that for y?
Put the 3/5 on the other side.
Well, close. You want to get rid of the 3/5, right?
Yeah.
How about if I multiply both sides by the reciprocal?
The reciprocal.
There
Yep.
you go. That gets rid of the 3/5 completely and solves for y. So y is equal to 5/3.
5/3 x.
Okay? This problem is exactly the same. Only you have m is equal to this ridiculously complex fraction over this ridiculously complex fraction, but it's all times p. So I have m is equal to, let's just call that whole fraction question mark p. So how do I solve for p?
Oh, you're just going to multiply by the reciprocal.
Exactly. And the reciprocal, I don't need to do anything with this fraction. I just need to reciprocate it. Well, and this has a -1. Don't forget that. So p is going to be m times the reciprocal of this fraction. Well, what is the reciprocal of that fraction? I believe it's b.
B.
And it's as simple as that. Now, if somebody didn't realize that, you could spend 15 minutes trying to multiply these two fractions.
Oh, I was already thinking of picking numbers, like putting in T for R or
if
something.
if you don't recognize this technique, this is a very difficult problem. But if you recognize this technique, it's a 15-second problem. You don't have to do anything other than reciprocate that fraction. And it's important to realize that that is a fraction. It's not 3/5. It's much more complicated, but it's still a fraction. So if I multiply the right side of the equation by the reciprocal of this thing, I get p.
Yeah, that turns out a lot easier than how scary it was looking.
Yeah, and part of this process is going to be you figuring out how hard the problem is, whether it's easy, medium, or difficult. I mean, you have to make an assessment when you see the problem. Oh, this is way too difficult. I'm going to put a double check mark by it. I might even guess right now just to make sure that I get my guess in. You know what I'm saying? But that would have been wrong for that problem. It's just a question of viewing it in a certain way to see whether or not it's hard or not. And some problems you're going to be able to tell they're easy. I just got to keep working at it. In other words, this particular problem here, I'm never putting a check mark by this problem. I know that if I really work at it, I can find out what the value of 4b over a is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what's a good way to do this?
We could set that fraction equal to 2. Like put a is 2 and b is 1, maybe?
Well, this doesn't fit that because we have variables in the question, but we don't have variables in the answer.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a few ways we can do this. Let's solve for a. What is a equal to?
2b.
Okay, now let's substitute that into this part. So what is 4b over a? Well, a is 2b. What's that?
2.
That's it.
2b, yeah.
That's it. Now,
There you go.
there is a couple of other ways to look at this, and sometimes it's useful. In other words, you can't always do it that way, but if I'm trying to solve for this, then let's manipulate that until I at least get b over a. Well, I can get b over a by multiplying both sides by b and dividing both sides by a. So the first step is that. Now I'm going to divide both sides by a. So I get 2b over a. Now, if I divide both sides by 2, I get 1/2 equals b over a. So I've solved for b over a. What's 4b over a? 4 times that.
Oh, yeah. Which just gets you 2.
Yeah, and some of these questions will be easy enough that you can do it the first way we did it, which was the easiest way, but others will not be. Others you'll have to manipulate that first equation until you can get it like this. At the very minimum, you want b over a. You may not be able to manipulate that. Actually, I could manipulate that equation to get 4b over a. Watch what I do. I get 1 equals 2b over a. Well, how do I make that 4b over a? I multiply both sides by 2. And then I have 4b over a directly, and it's equal to 2.
There you go.
All right.
Okay. I'm starting to kind of like visualize the other little ways you can kind of go about it and stuff.
Well, and that's really important. Like I said, you're not trying to prove your math knowledge to anybody. You're trying to get the highest score you can get.
Right.
So even if you don't understand how to algebraically solve it, if you can solve it, that's just as good. And that's important to keep in mind. I just looked at my clock and I realized I've taken you over your time. You good to go for now?
Yeah, and I will be sure to call you back sometime very soon.
Yeah, schedule more. I'd certainly like to do some questions from the calculator portion also.
Okay, that'd be great.
Just to let you know the difference. I suspect there's not as great a difference as you think there might be between the calculator and the non-calculator portion.
Okay.
But even still, it'd be good if we had a chance to cover some of those also.
Yeah, for sure.
And we didn't cover any geometry problems at all. And there are certainly geometry problems on the test.
So maybe a couple more meetings before the...
If your test is May 7th, yeah, I would definitely suggest at least 2 half-hour sessions, maybe even 3.
Yeah, I can definitely fit time for those. So
I'm sure it must be tough with your tennis schedule. I can't imagine how you possibly schedule your day each day. I mean, you probably practice tennis 6 hours a day, don't you?
Not quite.
Not quite that much, but...
Not quite. I'm actually starting a tournament locally.
Oh, yeah?
Not tomorrow, but Wednesday. So
okay.
That's, you know, the teachers seem to schedule all the work right when tournament starts. So.
Really? They don't give you any break? You're still at Kent, Denver?
Yep, still over there. So.
And you're going to play on
Just
their,
had.
or are you going to play on their team this next year when you're a senior?
Yep, I will again. So.
Good for you. I'm sure that
Yeah, good stuff.
sure they'll be happy with that.
Yeah, thanks.
I follow your results every now and then. I notice you're still #1 Intermountain and in Colorado.
Oh well, thank you.
Well,
Thanks
you have been for
following.
2 or 3 years. I'm a tennis fan from way back. How could I not?
Yep.
I don't have that many students that are #1 Intermountain.
Well, thank you
It's
very
funny.
much.
I told you that my cousin used to be #1 in Colorado, but he played at the same time as Agassi played. And Agassi played out in Nevada, so there was no way my cousin was ever getting to be #1 Intermountain.
Yeah, that's tough.
Agassi had that locked up. So.
Uh-huh. That's cool that he got to play with him, though.
It is. It is. I thought so also. But where are you going to try to go to college? Do you have some in mind?
I've taken a visit to Dartmouth
Uh-huh.
because their coach was very interested in my tennis, and
Uh-huh.
I went out there to see if that would be a good fit, and it seems like it is.
Ah. You think you'll get
And I'm also,
will you get a scholarship to play at some of these schools?
yeah, they do it a little differently with the Ivy League in terms of athletic scholarships,
Uh-huh.
but definitely something like that. And then I'm also talking a lot with DU here at home, so
They have a pretty good tennis program, don't they?
they do.
Yeah, that's what I have always.
And a very, very good business school, which is what I'm kind of
But
interested
you
in.
want to
So.
study. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Well, it's good. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good to hear from you again. Are you taking any math this year, or did you take a year off from math?
No, I'm taking math. I'm taking function, statistics, and trigonometry,
Oh, okay.
which is kind of like a lower level pre-calc sort
Okay.
of class.
Well, I can certainly, if you ever need any help in the trig, I can do that, and I can do it in the functions. I might not be able to help you with the statistics, but uh, if you need help in the others, let me know.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right, Casey. Well, you have a good evening, and good luck in your tournament coming up.
Thanks. I'll talk to you again soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.